Our tonight's format is probably going to be similar to other campaign forums that you've seen, but I just want to make sure that everybody understands what we'll be doing. Each candidate will have a 2-minute introduction, which they can use as they choose. They're going to have 2 minutes per question. The candidates will rotate the order of their starting. And the rebuttals, they have an additional 1 minute to rebut or 1 minute to add to their own response. It's their choice. They have 10 rebuttals. We did that because we felt that it could make it more conversational and they could get more in depth as the candidates chose. They're going to have a 3-minute closing statement. A rebuttal card cannot be used on opening or closing statement. They're going to see a yellow card for a 30-second warning, and Michelle can pull that up so you can see what that's going to look like. And they're going to have a red card when time is up. So Michelle's our timekeeper tonight. Thank you for doing that, Michelle. And that's it for this evening. So with that, we're going to go ahead and start. I will ask the first question. Correct, Dave? Number 1. If candidates, you do have water in introductions. Sorry. So yes. Brett, would you like to start for opening statement?
Absolutely, happy to. Well, good evening, folks. I'm Long Beach Vice Mayor Richardson. I want to thank the Lakewood Village Neighborhood Association and Janine and David for participating in this. We had a great time meeting with you all on your back porch and learning a little bit more about your neighborhood. I'm here with my wife, Richardson, and our 2 daughters, who go to school not far from here. We pass this campus every day, taking them to school. I'm proud to have served on our Long Beach City Council for 8 years. Started off back in 2014. In the past 8 years, I've been a leader on some of Long Beach's biggest challenges. I'm proud to serve as our city's vice mayor. I'm not originally from Long Beach. I grew up in a working community, a working family. My father was in the Air Force. I was born on Scott Air Force Base in Belleville, Illinois. My mother was a welder in Winslow, Missouri, on the assembly line, Rosie River. She was originally from Alabama. When my mother and father divorced, we moved around a lot, and we ultimately settled down in Alabama for a few years. It was a very small town. My 2nd grade teacher was my mom's 1st grade teacher, and my 5th grade teacher was my aunt. When I was 11 years old, we moved to California in a Greyhound bus. It was a single mom. It was my sister, who was a year older than me, and my younger brother. We had a 2-bedroom apartment. My mom had 1 bedroom. My sister and my brother had a bedroom, and I slept on the couch. We were working families, so I worked at Jack in the Box when I turned 15 and a half, and my sister worked at the stationery shop, and my mom worked at Arby's. We all committed to going to school, getting an education, and making a difference in our lives. I'm proud of the work that we've done on the Long Beach City Council. In North Long Beach, we stood up for things like building the first library in the district, and restoring our paramedic services that we had been cut, and we had 3-minute slow response times. As mayor, I'm going to fight to make sure that every community has what they need to thrive. Proven track record of delivering results in North Long Beach and across the city, having built the city's first municipal homeless shelter. And I look forward to this conversation and working together with all of you. Thanks so much.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Suzie Price. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you to our hosts for allowing us to have the opportunity to speak with you tonight. I was born in the United States, but my mother and I came back to this country from her country of birth when I was 7 years old. I learned how to speak English at the age of 7, and my mother taught me how to thrive in a new country. My mother was a school nurse and taught me the importance of public service. She retired after 42 years as a school nurse with the LA Unified School District. And her foundation led me to become a public servant, having a career of 24 years in service, not politics. I fell in love with the city of Long Beach when I moved here at the age of 18. I worked my way through Long Beach State, getting my bachelor's degree, my master's in public administration, and serving as student body president. I had the opportunity to learn so much about this beautiful city, serving at the time when Mayor O'Neill was our mayor, learning how to incorporate student activities with the city of Long Beach, and being with President Maxson as we dug the first shovels into the ground for the pyramid. I owe a debt of gratitude to Long Beach State because that is really when my life began. I went on to law school, and as a result of an experience I had in an internship in law school, I've dedicated 24 years of my life to serving crime victims through some of the most dangerous and traumatic situations of their lives as a criminal prosecutor. I ran for office by way of the PTA 8 years ago. I'm a very grassroots candidate. We wanted a crosswalk. 43 crosswalks and a flashing beacon later, I've learned that our city has a lot of challenges ahead of us, although we have a lot of great opportunities. We've accomplished many great things in the area of environment and business allocation, business resources, and so much in terms of housing and working on our major problems together. But we have a financial deficit of $25 million coming up and a homeless problem that's 62% increase. We need a mayor with her eyes on Long Beach, a mayor that cares about this city, a mayor who doesn't want us to be LA, and I'm that mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. The first question will go to Suzie, and it is, the Queen Mary will cost hundreds of millions of dollars to become fully functional. Where do you stand on the future of the Queen Mary?
Sure. So I was the only council member who voted against giving $23 million to Urban Commons. And that's because it makes no sense when you're entering a partnership with someone and there's a $250 million liability that they're supposed to pay for, that they ask you to give them $23 million up front. That's just common sense. I'm proud of that decision, but having said that, we now have an asset that is really a liability. The true cost of the Queen Mary right now to restore is about $500 million. I am not in favor of spending tax dollars to restore the Queen Mary unless we go to a vote of the people. I will tell you that I think the Queen Mary is currently being evaluated by the port as a potential asset. The port does not want the Queen Mary, but what the port may want is the land behind the Queen Mary called Pier H. If the port can monetize Pier H in a way that it makes sense for the port to take the Queen Mary, then it might be a situation that works out. I will be open to any and all possibilities, but in my opinion, the Queen Mary needs to come out of the water so that it doesn't continue to deteriorate in the salt, and the Pier H needs to be monetized by something like an expanded cruise terminal. We need to increase our cruise passenger fees from the $2.50 we charge now to somewhere around $7 to $8. And if we do that, we might be in a position to generate enough revenue to help restore the Queen Mary in whole or in part as a tourist attraction for people entering and leaving the cruise ship. They can spend the night there on a hotel before they board their cruise the next day, not having to come at 3:30 in the morning, and they can explore the ship, take a tour, and on their way out, just like they do at Disneyland, be directed towards the gift shop where they can purchase things about the Queen Mary, the city of Long Beach, or where they just went on their cruise. The Queen Mary has the potential to be a tourist attraction and generate revenue, but it certainly cannot generate enough revenue to restore itself. There is no way. And we also have a submarine that we need to figure out what to do with sitting right next to the Queen Mary. So that's another thing our mayor's going to have to deal with, and I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you. I just want to explain that the little purple things are rebuttal cards. I think you both figured that out already. And if you just hand it to Dave or myself, whoever you're supposed to.
Great.
Yeah. Or do you want me to read it again?
No.
Okay.
Good. Well, I'll tell you, when I was raised in Alabama, we had certain values. One was you have a responsibility to pass things off to the next generation in a better position than it was when you received it. And I think when I think of the Queen Mary, anecdotally, imagine you have a home that your grandfather built. Maybe he didn't invest in it, maybe he has termites, and that passed on to the next generation, and they didn't take care of it as well. And then it passed on to you, and all the neighbors show up and say, okay, time to burn down the house. Well, no, you would treat it like an asset. You would do an analysis, evaluation on what makes the most business sense about that asset. You want to, at the very least, get a return on your investment. That's where we are with Queen Mary. It's an asset, and there are significant liabilities in that asset. We need to first acknowledge that getting rid of the Queen Mary could cost between $150 and $250 million, and that's a cost that we would have to pay. Or we monetize the Queen Mary, extend it by taking it out of salt water and find economic life to it. There are a lot of suggestions in terms of development that can happen and utilize it for cruise ship terminals and things like that. But by taking it out of the water, you can extend its lifetime by 75 years. We monetize at 75 years to create the revenue source that can help offset the costs that are needed to restore the ship. And so my commitment is that, number one, we have to protect our city's revenues, our city's services. Our general fund is in trouble, and we can't allow the Queen Mary to continue to become a liability on our general fund, so it impacts the services that we all care about, police officers, firefighters, libraries, after-school programs. And so in order to do so, we have to have a strategy that protects it, extends its life, and if we find out that that's not feasible, then we have a discussion about alternatives to that. Thank you.
So the one difference between the Queen Mary and your grandfather's clock is that we have for decades now allowed operators to come in and loot the Queen Mary. They have taken everything out of the Queen Mary that's of any value. So this is not your grandfather's clock that is in your house and you just don't take care of it. We have mismanaged and failed to oversee the Queen Mary, and we have some liability for that as a city, and that's a fact. I love that I'm hearing Councilman Richardson talk about taking out of the water. I've been saying that since day one, and I recently heard him start saying it as well. That's absolutely the case. It has to come out of the water, but if the cost of restoration is $500 million and the cost of alternate disposition is $100 million, that's still a $400 million difference. And that's still a reality that we have. So we can't say a $100 million difference is something that we can't afford, therefore it's not an option, because neither is $500 million. So we have to be open-minded, we have to think about what we can do, and we have to explore all options.
So I get a response. No, I don't have to give one. I don't have to see my service.
So you have to get one every time you respond. Either one of you respond.
All right. Good. Thanks. So we both served on the Long Beach City Council for 8 years, and we all know the story. And people don't need excuses or to rile people up behind the story, but they need is solutions. The other thing that they need is to be able to unify people behind the vision. Councilwoman Price will tell you that she was the only voice, the only one who voted no against it. The mayor can't afford to be the only one to say something about bringing your colleagues along. If we're all going down and you're the one protesting, you haven't demonstrated leadership that you can count to 5 votes and get additional people who work with you for 8 years to go along with you. As mayor, we're going to unify a vision and be able to deliver the actual votes to make sure that we can deliver on what our vision is for the community. Thank you.
Okay, next question. Oh, I'm sorry.
Same question. I'm not, sorry. Go ahead.
Permission?
You don't need mine.
Yes, absolutely. We need a mayor with an independent voice who, when they see something that's happening that's bad policy, is not going to feel like they have to go along with the group thing. And you know what? We got taken advantage of as a city by Urban Commons. They took tens of millions of dollars of our money that we cannot account for. And absolutely, there are times when you have to say what needs to be said, even if that means you don't go along with the rest of the group. Because you know what? A lot of times there are people in a group and they sit around a room and they say and do things that are absolutely wrong in the name of governance and power, and you need to stand up and say if something is not right. And I am so proud I did that, and I will do that as mayor.
Next question. How would you promote public safety when policing is under significant scrutiny? And Councilmember Richardson goes first.
Sure. So I represent a district that's had a history of crime, property crimes, lack of investment, and my residents, when they want the very same things most of the people in this room want. Number one, they want to have a healthy and well-resourced police department, fire department that's going to respond to them when they have an emergency. What they also want is to have a safer community where they don't have as many emergencies, where they don't have to call the police as much, where they can go to their park and feel safe. And that's why I believe that we have to, one, make sure that we invest in things like recruitment and retention in our police department. We are short on staff today. We do the very same things in our fire department as well to make sure that we have those resources. But on the other hand, what does it take to build a truly safe community? I believe you have to invest in things that are not safe. That's why as a council member, I prioritize things like building banks and libraries, investing in the Houghton Park Community Center. So spaces people that feel comfortable walking through. Now it has murals and new facilities. Investing in youth. We've partnered on things like education and working with our school district to have after-school programs, second chances for our youth. Because together, if you invest in your youth, you invest in public safety, you create a sense of safety. There are partners that have not been engaged that we need to engage. For example, when my predecessor was on the city council, we needed a business district. And so we knocked on doors to those businesses, and the city said, it'll take 10 years to get it done. But we worked on it, and we got it done in 2. And so we have an uptown business district with security, with Conservation Corps helping pick up trash and sweep up the sidewalks. That street level work is what builds healthy and safe communities, and we need to do it in every one of our neighborhoods.
So the way we address public safety with the police being under scrutiny, which I believe was the question, is one, we continue to add more police officers to our police force because we're currently down 250 officers and 103 of those positions are vacant and budgeted. So I'm not even talking about adding more to the budget yet, I'm just talking about filling the vacancies that we have, which is 103. And if we fill those vacancies alone, our response times will improve. Of course, we have to acknowledge that for a city of our size and demographic, and if you read any policy papers, you'll know it's our size and demographic combined, police response times and police presence are the #1 deterrent of crime. But not every community trusts the police in the same way. Some do trust the police, and others, for good reason, don't. There are very few professions where if you make a mistake, you can impact someone's life and the life of that community for eternity. And policing is one of those. Law enforcement is one of those. Prosecution is one of those. And so we need to make sure that we're establishing a culture of trust, which is why I'm very proud that as chair of the Public Safety Committee, I champion the body-worn camera program, that now every patrol officer in the city of Long Beach has a body-worn camera. We were told for years that it was too expensive, that it was going to cost millions of dollars to oversee the program. I kept saying it will not cost that much, and I was correct because what I do in my day job led me to believe what the request would be and how much the cost would be, and that was exactly what happened with our costs. We need to invest in more police officers. We need to invest in programs like body-worn cameras and additional training. But there is no substitute for having adequate police staffing. And if you want to look at all the things, I congratulate Councilman Richardson for everything he's done. But he represents a district that has a very high crime rate, one of the highest in the city year after year, despite those investments. And his residents, the ones that have talked to me, want more police presence on the streets. That's important to them.
So I want to talk about that great community that's had issues with crime. We have to get the story right. Crime didn't just pop up in North Central and West Long Beach overnight. It's been like that for generations. And we have to acknowledge that there's been systemic lack of investment in that community. When I took office, my community was the only one without a bank, the only one without a coffee shop, the only one without a library. We didn't even have a paramedic. And I'm looking at Councilwoman Gavlich here because she remembers. In 2010, it was the FY 2011 budget they were negotiating. And ended up, I believe it was 2 things on the chopping block that day. And it was a deficit budget, very hard years. And what ended up happening was, I had just become chief of staff at Councilman Neal. Now using up with time because I need to get the story right. So basically, 2 things on the chopping block. The Long Beach Municipal Band, which was about an $800,000 cut, and it was Paramedic Rescue 12 that served North Long Beach. I was the only paramedic in the 9th district. And it was our second council meeting. I think I was chief of staff, and council chambers were filled. There were more people there than we have here today. And a lot of seniors, people had big signs, and they said, save the municipal band. And so we learned a hard lesson today. The band got cut, and the band got saved, and the paramedic got cut. The impact was 3 minutes slower response times. The challenge was nobody was there in North Long Beach. And we had to deal with that for 7 years, 3 minutes slower response times. And so when we talk about the issues of crime and all of these things in our community, we have to acknowledge that this is not short-term work we're talking about here. We're talking about addressing the challenges of generations, changing the way we think about systems, and making long-term investments. Using more. We have to think about this as a garden, right? Imagine you have a garden, and that garden has all the things you want to eat in that garden. But you walk away from that garden and you don't water that garden. And somebody comes up 5 years later and turns on the faucet and expects fruit to come out. No fruit comes out. This is no longer a garden. And they take their faucet and they put it in another garden. And that garden continues to get more and more, water. And then somebody comes up and says, this is not a garden, but it is a great place to grow a garden. You have to pull out the weeds. That's the nuisance liquor stores, the nuisance motels, all of those things that have happened in North Central West Palm Beach. You pull them out, like I've been working on doing. And then you plant new seeds, libraries, community centers. And if you do that, then you have a garden. Our communities need fundamental change. And to ignore generations of lack of investment or to score a political point shows that you don't have the compassion it takes to serve as mayor of Palm Beach. Because you have to understand that we truly have to be a mayor for our entire city. Thank you.
Well, that's okay. Well, I don't even know what to say to that. I mean, as mayor, you have to make sure that you're serving all the residents of the city. And as mayor, you have to make sure that you're actually carrying out responsibilities and delivering results. And you can talk all day long and use beautiful language, but at the end of the day, the data speaks volumes, and you have a duty to your residents to make sure that you're solving problems. And I don't think solving problems means that you don't have compassion. The question that was posed to us tonight is how do you address public safety issues with people scrutinizing the police department? The answer to that question is you continue to invest in police departments because that's what people want in their communities. They want to feel protected and they want the response times to be consistent, and you hold the police accountable. That's the answer. That's not a lack of compassion. That's public service. Residents deserve to feel safe. And, we passed the budget for the Michelle Obama Library in 2014, our first year there. This was not Mr. Richardson's project. We passed the budget then. And despite that investment, crime rates continue to go up.
Highland oil funding is diminishing. And what are your plans to support the facilities and programs that are currently funded by Tideland revenues? And I believe that Councilman Price is first.
Sure. So Tideland's revenues are going to be a diminishing source of revenue for the city of Palm Beach. So for those who don't know, of our $3.2 billion budget, we have 9 enterprise funds, and 2 of our enterprise funds rely upon oil revenue. And those enterprise funds demand that the money only be spent in specific ways or in specific areas, and Tidelands is one of them. So as oil revenue continues to diminish, the city is going to have to identify additional sources of revenue from which to fund programs and activities and infrastructure along the Tidelands area. So things like the aquarium, the convention center, all the bathrooms and playgrounds along the beach bike path, all infrastructure from the sand to the concrete is going to have to be paid for through another source of revenue, which is probably going to have to be general fund. In order for the general fund to be able to consume all that it has to in terms of debt and liability, the general fund is going to have to be augmented with sales tax and property tax revenues. We're going to have to work together as a city to figure out how to increase our revenues because the general fund is going to have to take on more responsibility for the city than it has before, because thus far, all of our projects in the Tidelands area are paid through the Tidelands Fund, including our police and lifeguard activities all along the beach. So moving forward, we're going to have to incorporate those liabilities into the general fund and do so without raising taxes, which is a commitment that I've made.
So, thank you. So first thing that we have to do is we have to acknowledge that, the Tidelands Fund, it takes care of many of the assets that Councilman Price mentioned. We care about those private assets, like our aquarium. But we also need to understand that things are changing. way that we used to budget for titles, you know, we would say it's okay to build an $8 million pool because it was tight, because you had the money for it, because it was tight. And no one else could use that money. And the rest of us that are outside of titlings, we would say, hey, maybe we don't get the pool this year, maybe you fix the roof at the Home Park Community Center. We have to make those choices. And so while I support, you know, the fact that we're gonna have to find out a realistic transition, we're gonna have to be honest about the expectations. We won't be able to maintain all the expectations and build $100 million projects for them. And that's an honest conversation we're gonna have with our residents. But I think we should prepare for it. It's a part of our climate action adaptation plan. We need to think about how we boost revenues and get every part of town contributing to sales tax and property tax like North and Central West Long Beach. We also have to have a tougher conversation with the state. The state tax code incentivizes us through sales taxes to build things like car dealerships and shopping malls. Well, that's yesterday. The tax, while we're running deficits and major cities are running deficits, they have a $90 billion surplus last year. So we need a tax code with the state that prioritizes things like moving away from oil. And, you know, make sure that we build the things we need, like housing that's affordable for Long Beach families. And so by having a more aggressive conversation with the state about the tax code, we can prepare for a more sustainable future. As mayor, you're a part of the Big 10 cities, the Big City Mayors group, which you deal directly with the governor and the legislature to negotiate these big issues with states. And so as mayor, I'm going to lead this conversation about a broader conversation that prepares us for what a climate resilient city looks like. Thank you.
The next question is regarding the homeless. Homelessness is an increasing problem throughout the city. What are your specific plans to address this issue? And Councilmember Richardson was first.
Sure. I have a plan called the Whole Plan, and it's comprehensive. It's based on much of the work that we've done with our Everyone Home Coalition. We have faculty from the Cal State Long Beach Social Work Program. We have folks like Brian DeAndrea from Century Village Cabrillo who all contributed to this plan. And the fact is, it is a crisis, and it's bigger in scale than what any of us anticipated when we took office. And we have to think comprehensively, both upstream about building capacity to keep people from falling into homelessness, and downstream with outreach and making sure that we have places for people to go. The whole plan is really fundamentally 4 parts. It's on our website. We brought a copy of it outside. But it's housing, building affordable housing, building every level of housing, and shelter and permanent supportive housing. That has to be a part of the mix. Outreach. We need to improve the outreach. We went from 2 reach teams to 3 reach teams. But I'll tell you, as we go out with our reach teams, they'll say, when we finally get someone to come off the street, we've got 3 weeks until they get a bed. And so that works together with housing and outreach. We need localized outreach plans. There's no outreach plan for downtown. There's no outreach plan for the LA River. We've dealt with homelessness issues around the LA River for literally decades. P is for pathways. I'm proud to have been the first person to have bought a home at 25 because I had a pathway to do so. We need pathways for people to buy homes, pathways for them to get jobs. Our pathways to get people off the street, it's confusing, it's complex. And so we need to make the pathway off the street and into housing easier. And then E is for expanding mental health services. I have a proposal that's working through the city council right now to work with our county to expand mental health services in our city. We have a number of great partners that do the work that are accountable to our local continuum of care. We have our own health department, one of 3 in the whole state. Then we need to build a more robust capacity to deal with mental health emergencies, how to identify them, and how to address some of the crises that are happening on the streets today. So I urge you to go to joinbrycerichardson.com/housing to see my whole plan. Thank you.
So while cities around us and counties around us saw a decline in homelessness, we saw a 62% increase in homelessness. We have 3,300 people who are currently living unhoused in the city of Long Beach. When you look at the population that's chronically homeless, you've got about a third or so of them who are living in unhoused because of a pure financial crisis, eviction, or lost their job. The other 2/3 are a category that are very difficult to reach because of mental health, substance abuse, or a co-occurring disorder. If you step back from a moment and think about homeless outreach in terms of how you would connect with another human being to try to get them to do something that they may think they don't need at that moment, it's through building a relationship based on dignity and respect and meeting people where they're at. The issue right now is an emergency situation in the city of Long Beach. We need to figure out how to connect people with services in the most efficient way. Our outreach teams currently do not work in the evenings and they don't work on the weekends. What we need to do is partner with our nonprofits to expand our outreach teams and our outreach capacity. We need to have an outreach team for each council district, staffed by our nonprofits who specialize in connecting people to services. That relationship is responsible for making sure that people feel heard and understood, and you can't do that by touching someone today and coming back a month later. You have to go every single day. That's what relationship building is for a 2-week period of time. The data suggests, and I know this because I'm involved in the homeless outreach space in my career, my profession, that somewhere around day 8 or 10, when you show up for someone, they're more likely to accept a recommendation that you are giving them and more likely to accept a service. That is the #1 way to get people off the streets today and connected to services. And I have made a request to the city manager that we do that immediately around the Billie Jean King Library through the use of our nonprofits, including the Long Beach Rescue Mission. It will make a difference, I promise you.
The city regularly claims to be broke and need new taxes to provide the services that other cities provide without additional tax burdens. Why is Long Beach an outlier, and what will you do to change the ongoing budget deficit?
You start with me? Okay, so my husband, Mark, and I are fortunate to own a small business. It was always Mark's dream. He grew up first to go to college in his family, and it was his dream to have a business. We know firsthand what it means to have a business and what it means to want to invest in the city of Long Beach. The city is currently doing very little to attract and retain new businesses to the city of Long Beach. We are allocating $0 to that mission. Now, in this past budget, we allocated $300,000 to that effort, but given how long it takes us to actually hire anyone, it's going to be 3rd or 4th quarter of next year before those positions get filled. What I would like to do is have a tax increment proposal where we set our baseline tax revenue at a certain point. Last year, we had $82 million in sales tax revenue. I'd like to set 82 or 83 as our baseline. Anything above that, I'd like to charge 1% of that and give it to business recruitment and retention so that we can attract new businesses to the city of Long Beach. If we can't get more businesses investing in the city of Long Beach, if we can't continue to make sure our property values stay high by creating a beautiful city that people want to live in, where crime rates are low, then we're going to continue to see ourselves falling into more and more into deficit. I've been on the Budget Oversight Committee for over 7 years. I understand our budget really well. I have never overspent my council budget and certainly did not overspend my campaign budget in the mayor's race. I understand what it takes to stay within a budget. I grew up with a single mom. I've been working since I was 14 years old. I will treat your money like it's my money, and I will not be stupid with it and irresponsible. And if that means I have to vote alone or talk alone, well, then I'll do that because you deserve that.